Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. And I want to say Shalom to Akhman Akwat out there pursuing this truth diligently. Coming at you once again with another lesson. And today I wanted to talk about a couple different books that get brought up quite frequently. And those books are going to be the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? The Book of Enoch, and the Book of Jubilees, right? Now, those are the ones you primarily hear talking about. I might go into a little bit about the Book of Adam and Eve. Now, if you're not familiar with these, great, all right, because they're crazy books, all right? They're bugged out, and they're what's labeled as, well, some of them. I mean, the least offending one would be the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? But there's still some crazy stuff in there, right? There's still some crazy stuff in there. They're mostly not equivalent, but they're mostly on par with what the Bible we have today says. Okay, but there is still some weird stuff in them. Okay, but they're like, again, they're like 90%, right? Correct, but that 10% is wacko, right? And these other books, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Adam and Eve, these are what's known as pseudepigrapha, all right, or pseudepigrapha. Now, how I originally got in on this was I was having a conversation with my wife about this documentary that we had watched. I don't know, maybe, I don't know, some point last year. It might be almost a year now because it might have been around the same time last year. I think it was more towards October. And it's this documentary we watched called National Geographic Flooded Tombs in the Nile. And basically, what they were looking was they were just trying to find, basically, they were looking at the ancient Cushites, right? As you can see, their goal was to uncover the kingdom of Cush. They were looking into the Cushites, right? And what they were doing specifically, primarily through it, was they were looking into this flooded tomb of this king. I should say his name here. Nastasen, okay, and this isn't really integral to the lesson, but this is just a little piece of interesting information. I brought it up on this channel before, and it says despite the name, the film is taking place in Sudan. Okay, it says it spotlights the royal burial ground of Nuri. Divers penetrate the tomb of King Nastasen. Now, in that, they end up finding a little doll, like a little carved trinket, all right, called a shabti. It's like it looks like a miniature statue, all right, and they're called a shabti. And me and my wife were talking about that earlier because I can't remember how we got on the subject, but before I came out here, something about Esau covering some shit up, and I remember I said, "Oh yeah, you remember that?" Because I think I remember mentioning it in here, and she watches the lessons, but you know, I put so many out that you're not going to be able to watch every single one sometimes, especially if I put 2 out, or you can miss one every once in a while. I don't know if she saw that one or maybe she forgot. And I said, "Oh, yeah, did I tell you?" I said the little mini shabti that they found, because they found this little shabti, this little miniature statue of this guy, Nastasen, right? And it had an elongated nose, all right, at its width. It was elongated in width, all right, which is standard to as they would say, as the Edomite scientists would say, negroid, a negroid nose, negroid feature, right, which is their term for so-called black features, right, Israelite features, because that's who we really are as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. For those of you that showed up and you don't know exactly where you are, that's who we are. We're the Hebrew Israelites, right, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Americans. We are actually Israelites, all right, that the Bible speaks of, all right, and there's countless historical proof. If you don't believe, go on. If it intrigues you, sit down, have a seat. We're not going to be going into that too much today, but maybe you'll learn something, right? Lord willing. But I told her, I was telling her, I said, "Oh yeah, because it had Negroid features, I mean, I'll show you it real quick. Nasta Shabti. This is what it looked like. Okay, and this isn't the best. Because I actually just since I was out here, on my computer, I texted her because we were talking about it, and then I came out here to do my lesson, and I said, because I told her, I said, oh yeah, those photos are gone, right? Now in this documentary, you can actually go and watch it. The flooded, and this is a little off topic, but you can go and watch this. Actually, if you click this, it should probably bring up the video, or you can just type in "flooded tombs of the Nile." Right, and it should bring you up a new YouTube video, 44 minutes. Now, if you go on this and you look through it, there was a scene with, I believe it was this individual here, all right, which I guess his name is Fakhri, all right, and, oh, wait, it's back. It's back. Okay, that's weird. I did a lesson a while ago, and it was completely gone. All right, they completely removed it, but I guess it's back now. Anyway, it sounds weird, but yeah, they found this little, here, I'll play a little excerpt, fair use, and I'm gonna actually do it at a faster speed because it's National Geographic. I know they're crazy with their stuff, but just watch.
A figurine, called a shabti, is traditionally carved in the buried king's likeness.
See the nose? There you go. Yeah. Well, they have that information now. You know what? That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, it did save. It did save. All right, so like I wanted to save that just in case it ever decides to wander off from the internet again, because I was trying to show this a while ago and dealing with the Cushites, and again, they're not Israelites, they're Hamites. But I tried to find this to show, because it's rare you see an artifact like this without its nose knocked off. Okay, it's very rare, because a lot of the time when you see these Shabtis and you go and look at them, I mean, first of all, you try to find them, and they look completely different. Like there was one. That's not really a Shabti, but that's more of a statue. There was one I saw earlier, and look at how slim the nose is. Okay, look at how slim the nose is. Another one. Look how slim the nose is. Right, and if they're not chipping them off completely, they're filing them down and doing all sorts of work. And we know the Edomites and some of the other nations are going to completely think that's false. I don't think the Hamites would disagree too much because again, this is their stuff. But yeah, was this it says new Shabti queen, Shabti of Queen Nasala, the Nubian queen of Kingdom of Cush, right? Nose, and you see this one at least has a little bit, bigger of a nose. But a lot of the time with these Shabtis and these statues and these tombs, I mean, you can go and look at this. Look at the tomb of King Gnostisan. It's cramped and it's flooded, and look at the nose. It's completely different. Right, and matter of fact, if you look up King Gnostisan, all right, you'll see one where he's dark, right, like this, which is probably more than likely what he did look like to some capacity. But when they show him other times, they try to make him lighter looking or not quite black looking, because this guy looks, well, he doesn't really have that many Hamitic features. He actually has just more standard black features. But here's an example, all right, of I guess this is a statue of him where the nose has just been knocked off, and you got to ask yourself, well, why are all these noses always knocked off? Well, they're very indicative of who those people are. And I guess this was a Queen Puabi, and look, they made her as white as these people weren't over there looking like that, especially if they were over there. I mean, here's another one. This is an AI video traveling back, and this is what they made them look like a modern Middle Eastern person. These people are Nubian, okay? And these people were Nubian, okay? This is what Nubians look like, all right? They're very, 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 very dark, all right? There's even Princess of Nubia, all right? And that's obviously an afro, all right? But sometimes you get, you want to look at Nubia and they get, darker Middle Eastern looking people. But Nubian people, look at the hair, look at the nose, look at the lips. That's what Nubian people look like. They're over there in, those areas of South Sudan and, and Sudanese people and all these different things. And then, they show the modern ones. This is when they could start taking pictures. Again, people change over time. People immigrate. People move. People get conquered. People get colonized. I mean, here's a picture of the Nubians. This is what they look like. I mean, they're not white looking, okay? I mean, look. Those were Nubians, okay? Actually, as a matter of fact, just because I'm sick of shit just disappearing, okay? I'm just sick of shit disappearing because you'll come up and you'll look at it and it'll be gone and then it'll come back and then all sorts of weird shit will happen. But anyway, it's besides the point, okay? Because what we're talking about today is really not about this. But I was telling her that it disappeared and you couldn't find it anymore other than a couple photos. Now I guess it's back. But I remember I did a lesson several months ago, and you couldn't find it. Couldn't find any information on it. I played through the whole video, and we couldn't find it at all. So I mean, I could have glossed over it, missed over it. That's always a potentiality. But I remember I skimmed through the whole thing, and I didn't see it not once. But again, it could always be a mistake, all right, on my end. But anyway, we're gonna get into the lesson. And what I want to do is start with a scripture, because just 1 minute over where I like to get it, and we're about to talk some more. So 2 Timothy 2:15, it says, "Study to show thyself approved unto Yahweh, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." So with this, we study, all right, not only to gain more aptitude, all right, let's go and get that word, all right, to become more apt and aptitude. Okay, aptitude is an innate natural capacity or potential to learn and perform specific physical and mental tasks. In short, inclination, talent, all right, a capacity for learning. All right, we grow. All right, our aptitude, our mental aptitude grows. We not only study for aptitude and growing in knowledge, all right, to become stronger in knowledge, all right, but also, I mean, it is still a form of knowledge, but also to be able to rightly divide the word of truth, to be able to tell the real from the fake. All right, if someone's spouting some bullshit off, we can, hey man, that's fake. All right, and we can go to the scripture and show you why that is, or we can go to the history and show you why that is. Some people don't like to, go off of scriptures. All right, really, you can just, scuttle those, people along, and tell them to hit the highway. All right, give them their walking papers, right, so to speak, and basically, fire them from the conversation and say, "I mean, get out of here." All right, they're permission to kick rocks, but sometimes you want to show people that even without scripture, these things are still very, very, very provable. Okay, and today, since I was going there, I was looking up, because there's so many things that Esau lies about. I basically asked a question. I said, how can someone independently study and find historical truths without utilizing modern interpretations and going off of what scientists and historians have claimed to find? And I was looking into that. And it says you must rely entirely on primary sources, basically learning languages, and look into, I guess there's archives out there and stuff to do your own research. But a lot of that stuff's kind of hidden. But I was just curious on how that could be a potential situation you could do. Say if I wanted to go and look at like all these things that these people base their information off of, how would I do that? Well, it basically just walks you through how to do that. Like it says, use open access archives, but not all these archives are open, right? And that's really where I stopped. And I wanted to, I was thinking about historical things. What specific time period, a historical event? I guess the Dead Sea Scrolls came to mind. So because I wanted to. Everybody always talks about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now I use a translation of the Bible quite frequently. All right, called the NASB. The what's the full abbreviation? I can't remember what it stands for. Let me see. It stands for the not the NASB, but the NASV, I think, or NRSV, excuse me, which is the new revised standard version. I specifically use the updated version because I'm not going to use the angelicized version or either the Catholic versions. I just want the updated, version. I'd rather just have the NRSV, but the only one you can get on here is just the updated one, most standard one. But the NRSV is partially uses the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew, and then it uses some version of the Greek. I don't think it uses the Septuagint. And then on top of that, it also uses bits and pieces of the Dead Sea Scroll, right? So those are the things that it utilizes. All right, let me move my mic here, but it utilizes those things. And we have a lot of people that are always talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Adam and Eve, and all these different things that, again, I mean, the Dead Sea Scrolls gets somewhat of a pass because there is some stuff in there that, again, it's 90% concurrent with the Masoretic text. Let's see. It says the content of the collection. So really, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls really is a collection, all right, of manuscripts. But there's one, there's some of them that are more concurrent with the Bible. Some of them are crazy, but some of it, again, it's a collection. It's an anthology of scrolls. But there are some of them, all right, that are purely just mostly the Masoretic text. All right, there are that. Right. Matter of fact, you can see that they're even written, all right, in ancient Hebrew. Looks a little bit different, but if you go and look into it, we're just going to read it. It says the Dead Sea Scrolls are a vast collection of roughly 1,000 ancient Jewish manuscripts discovered between 1947 and 1956 in desert caves near the archaeological site of Qumran. It says along the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea. Dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE, these texts predate any other surviving manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible by nearly 1,000 years. They provide an unprecedented window into the Second Temple Judaism, and the people of Second Temple were, mind you, bugged out. These people were crazy. These were the same people, the late Second Temple Jewish individuals were the same people that started calling Gehenna the gates to hell. All right, and that's where we got the Second Temple, Jewish people, and some of them might have been at this point, just bugged out Jake. Some might have been other nations that were calling themselves as Jews, which happens quite frequently. But anyway, regardless, these people were bugged out. They were crazy, and they're the reason that hell is the Christian hell that we know today is what it is today. All right, it's hell and this place where you burn. Well, they're the ones that came up with that. Late Second Temple Jewish quote unquote scholars were the ones that came up with that information. Bugged out, nuts. All right, not according to Scripture, as we're going to get in, but just I don't know, delusion in the mind. Whether it's delusional, whether they're purposely wanting to write a lie. Whatever reason, it's wrong, it's not factual, and it's not accurate, right? But these were the same individuals. And matter of fact, in Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, it shows that, all right? We actually have it somewhere here. In the Zondervans, all right? Which is, if you go and look this up and you try to find a PDF of it, you might be able to find it now, but... yeah, see, purchase option. It's very hard to find a copy of this, a PDF. It's like right here, can't find it. You go online, you try to look it up. You go to any of these. Maybe this one will let you download it. Oh, this one will let you. Okay, this must be where I got mine. But you can go and get it there. All right, it's 2 gigabytes. It's a hefty book. But when you go in here, you can search. All right, you can either go down here and go through. Really, that's the best way to do because it's such a large file. You can type like this, henna, but it usually takes quite some time. So your best way to do it, see, it's slowly getting there. Here we are. It's gonna take some time. You just got to be patient with it. It's got such a big file. But Gehenna, okay. Let's see. It's okay. It doesn't say necessarily Second Temple, but let's see. When was the Second Temple period? Second Temple period is a post-exilic period. This is after, Jake was, they went off, we went off, all right, we were already exiled. We were cast out and scattered, diaspora, right? So this is after that happened, all right? And again, our people are already nuts, believing all sorts of crazy shit. And the other thing you got to realize is just because it's old, all right, because they say, oh, it's 1,000 years before the manuscripts that we know today, all right, the Masoretic text. Well, just because it's old doesn't mean that it's right. There's a lot of old bugged out shit. Okay, and during the time even of Yahushai, all right, walking on earth, there were bugged out people. Even before Yahushai, all right, there were false saviors, all right, in play before Yahushai even came on scene, man. All right, so there's a lot of crazy shit. So let's see. After the Old Testament period, Jewish apocalyptic writers began to call the Valley of Hinnom the entrance to hell. Later, hell itself. Let's see. I want to ask it a question. Let's see. Let's ask. Just type in, when was the Second Temple period? No, it'll bring up, and I'll say, okay. So, in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, it mentions that after the Old Testament period, that Jewish apocalyptic if I can get it together, apocalyptic writers began calling Gehenna hell. Was this were those people part of the Second Temple period? Yes, they were. Okay, I was correct. So yes, absolutely. The Jewish apocalyptic writers mentioned in the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Dictionary were active during the Second Temple period. So yeah, the Second Temple period, they're fucking nuts, man. All right, they were nuts. They started doing all sorts of wacko shit, man. And you got a lot of wacko, crazy books. You know what books came out of the Second Temple period? But it says the Old Testament period, pre-Second Temple, early Second Temple. The dead went to Sheol, a neutral, shadowy underworld. Again, still bugged out. It says existence for both the righteous and the wicked. That's Sheol really. It's really Sheol is really the grave. All right, that's really referring to the grave. And Gehenna, it really the either the place of future punishment. All right, which is Gehenna, it was referring to a place of future punishment. Or the grave, all right, Sheol, the grave, okay? It says Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom, was a physical, geographic location outside Jerusalem, the Valley of Ben Hinnom. Yeah, the Valley of Ben Hinnom, as it says. It was, I think it was outside of the area of Judah. And yeah, it was a place that they kept burning perpetually, all right? It was a garbage dump, but it's also a place where, I believe was it King Manasseh, sacrificed his son. There was a lot of, idol worship, and there was a lot of Baal and primarily Molech, all right, being worshipped there. So it says the intertestamental period, late Second Temple. So Old Testament, that was the pre-Second Temple, early Second Temple, all right? So, again, there was, I'm talking about late Second Temple. That's when shit really started getting weird, Okay, the pre-Second Temple, early Second Temple, that early Second Temple is really when it started getting crazy. But the Old Testament period was the Old Testament. All right, the Old Testament was written, but after the Old Testament was written, people started doing some crazy shit. They were already doing crazy shit, but that's when the crazy shit really kicked off, right? So the intertestamental period, this is where it kicks off, the late Second Temple. During the 2nd and 1st century BCE, smack in the middle of the Second Temple period, Jewish writers faced intense foreign oppression, such as under the Greek Seleucids. They began writing apocalyptic literature to make sense of suffering, introducing ideas of ultimate divine justice, final judgment, and resurrection. The metaphorical leap, and it was during this late Second Temple timeline. There you go. The late Second Temple, the Second Temple individuals, and really during the early Second Temple, but they say it's the Old Testament period. I'm talking pre-Second Temple thing. That's the Old Testament, right? And they say that I guess the Old Testament was early Second Temple, but if it was early Second Temple, these weren't the same individuals, because the late Second Temple, the true Second Temple area, those people were fucking nuts. Okay, it says they began writing. Okay, so anyway, the metaphorical leap. It was during this late Second Temple time frame that writers began using Gehenna, or originally a physical place of fire and judgment, as a cosmic metaphor for the destination of the wicked. Okay, you can find these exact apocalyptic writers in Jewish pseudepigrapha. Here we go. I didn't even have to ask. This is writings from the Second Temple era that were not included in the Hebrew Bible canon, but were read, so they're not canonical. All right, these are not inspired by Yahweh Shema Shai at all, and these include the Book of Enoch, all right, the Dead Sea Scrolls, as well as the Book of Jubilee, all right, which is the main ones we're going to talk about, and probably also the Book of Adam and Eve. Bear with me, I'll grab a drink. So this period, they went completely off the deep end, completely nuts. All right, fucking nuts, crazy. And these are where those books, all right, that a lot of these jakes out here like to read. Okay, they like to get involved with some fucking weird, crazy shit. See, the Bible isn't enough for Jake. They got to go and get the Book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls. They got to go and get the Book of Adam and Eve, all right, the Book of Mormon. Then they want to go and read the Quran. They want to read all these different things, and they end up becoming fucking weird, bug out, half truth, half minded weirdos. I've talked to some of these individuals, man, and they're crazy. All right. They're crazy. Specifically one that used to come to the job I used to work at. He was nuts. He was a Nation of Islam guy, but he was like, he also, like, there were some things he believed in the Bible, but Israelites, but then also that Jesus wasn't a prophet, man. It was Muhammad. It's just, this is what happens when you try to find so much knowledge when you don't understand the source material in the first place. All right, you don't even understand or have a grasp of the Bible, and you don't even, or wherever you're starting. All right, wherever you're starting. Say if you start with the Quran, all right, and you don't have a grasp of the Quran, all right, and you try to go and start reading some other book, you're not going to understand what the Quran's really talking about. And again, I'm talking about from anything. All right, that's just how understanding literature and digesting it happens. All right, if I'm over here trying to play. I'm trying to learn everything there is about Super Mario, and then I start going and diving in to The Legend of Zelda, all right, and trying to compare some. I'm going to have some weird fucking thoughts if I try to put them on the same frame, because they're two different things, okay? One's, at the end of the day, they're both Nintendo, all right, because, they're both Abrahamic religions. Yeah, they're both Abrahamic religions, all right, Islam and Christianity and Judaism. Yeah, all of it's Abrahamic religion. But just because it's Abrahamic doesn't mean that some of those aren't bugged the fuck out, right? So that's just how it works. But again, people they don't like to stick with the source material, okay? If you're trying to learn how to fix a 1972 Corolla, all right, you're not going to start going looking in a book of a Ford F-150. All right, you're not going to jump over there and start, well, maybe there's something that I can use, all right, to help this, this Corolla that I'm building. What the fuck? No, man. No, focus on the book about the Corolla, okay? And that's what our people have an attention span issue is what they'll usually do. They'll read the Bible and they don't quite understand it, or, they start getting an itch, all right? Like they're on dope. They start getting an itch to go and find some other stuff, and they start looking stuff up. And because they don't have a fundamental understanding of the scriptures, really because the Holy Spirit's not on them because the Lord didn't put it on them, they end up finding out some crazy shit, and they end up thinking they found some stuff when they didn't find anything, man. Here it is, that you thinking you found gold when all you found was coal, right? Look, man, I found gold. And people with the truth, They're gonna be able to say, man, they ain't no fucking gold. I know what I found, man. You're just a hater. Yeah, no, it ain't that we're hating. It's just that those books are crazy. All right, they're crazy. They have a lot of crazy shit in them, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. Is some of the crazy shit that's in them. So anyway, these are what, as you heard the term mentioned, Jewish pseudepigrapha. All right, now if you don't know anything about the word pseudo, all right, I spelt it all wrong. Anyway, pseudo, it means false, all right, or deceiving. Okay, it means fake. You know, I was just about to talk that. I talk about there's a term that I looked up one time, and it came up with the word pseudo-intellectual technobabble. All right, and I'd use that term from time to time, and it's really not a word, but it's pseudo-intellectual. All right, it means, you know, it acts highly educated but lacks true knowledge. There's a lot of these pseudo-intellectual individuals, and what they do is they technobabble. All right, and what technobabble is, let's see if it can break down what technobabble is. Yeah, okay, so it is a word, okay? I thought it wasn't for a minute, because I looked up technobabble one time, and it didn't get it. Anyway, the internet's just flawed as hell anyway. Technobabble is the use of impressive-sounding scientific and technical jargon that is ultimately nonsensical, highly exaggerated, or entirely made up. And what a lot of these Christians and these bugged-out Hebrew Israelites, yes, bugged-out Hebrew Israelites, not all Hebrew Israelites are, are inspired by Yahweh Shem Shai. Some of these people are just crazy. They're calling themselves Hebrew Israelites. Meanwhile, they're calling on the name of Yah and frolicking around in a forest of daisies, doing some weird shit. They're bugged out, right? There's a lot of bugged out Israelites out there. But what they do when they talk is they speak with pseudo-intellectual technobabble, okay? You know, they act like they're smart, all right, and they try to sound impressive, but it's really just exaggerated, nonsensical, and just made up, all right? They made it up, all right, to quote Michael Jackson. But if you look up, let's put it all together, pseudo-intellectual technobabble. Okay? Pseudo-intellectual technobabble refers to the use of an impressing sounding jargon, buzzwords, and other pseudo-scientific terms to create the illusion of deep expertise. It relies on complex vocabulary or word salads that lack substantive meanings, often used to obscure the lack of a real understanding, dodge scrutiny, or make simple ideas sound profoundly complex. And that's what a lot of these individuals like to do. They like to use pseudo-intellectual technobabble, which really the word in itself is kind of a contradiction, because the word in itself is kind of pseudo-intellectual technobabble if you really want to get down to it. But that's what they do. They try to sound deep. You have a lot of these Hebrew teachers that try to just sound deep, okay? You see that a lot with like the people like Alazar and other people, you know, I mean, Vocab Malone's another person that's guilty of the pseudo-intellectual technobabble, all right? You know, I'm using all these big words and stuff. You're just, you know, rambling on about some shit that really doesn't mean anything, and you're trying to make yourself seem substantiated, all right? Or like you have some substantial evidence that you're bringing out, and you don't, all right? Can't even break down a scripture correctly, all right? So, pseudo, all right? So, pseudo-pigrapha, okay? So we got the first word, pseudo, all right, means fake, okay, or deceiving. So what is pseudepigrapha? Pseudepigrapha, coming from the word pseudo, false, and then epigraph, all right, which means inscription. So it literally means false inscription or false texts, right? It refers to falsely attributed works. In biblical studies, it describes a vast collection of ancient Jewish and early Christian writings written between 300 BC and AD 300 that claim to be written by famous biblical figures like Enoch, Moses, or Paul, but are actually written by anonymous authors. Because these texts lacked historical verification required by religious authorities, they were generally excluded from the recognized Bible canons, accepted books of the Bible. Now, a lot of people like to try to throw in the Apocrypha with it, but the Apocrypha is not pseudepigrapha. All right, you can look up the Apocrypha pseudepigrapha, and it should say no, because these were in the Bible longer than they weren't in the Bible. They were removed later by was it Protestants, I believe, but it's not pseudepigrapha. It might say it is. It says the Apocrypha and pseudepigrapha are distinct collections of ancient texts, but they heavily overlap. So, the Apocrypha Kings book accepted as scripture by some churches, but rejected by others, while pseudepigrapha includes books falsely attributed to famous biblical authors to gain credibility. So you see there's a big difference there. There's just some churches that don't necessarily believe in the Apocrypha, but pseudepigrapha or pseudepigrapha is unanimously known as being some infactual bullshit. So on the sticky note, I have a couple of things written down that I was looking into that were quite crazy. They were in this original one. All right, you can go and look into it. You know, if you want to go through here and pause it down, I'll scroll all the way through it to show you what's in here. Just also so I can archive it. All right, because I was just looking at a lot of these things. But anyway, I basically what I did was I just opened a new one. All right, because again, that had stuff about that documentary I was looking into all in it, and I don't want it all cluttered up. So I looked up Dead Sea Scrolls. So again, starting from down here, it says dating from the 3rd century BCE to 1st century CE, these texts, going with the Dead Sea Scrolls, these texts predate any other surviving manuscript of the Hebrew Bible by nearly 1,000 years. They provide an unprecedented window into the Second Temple Judaism, these people were bugged out. It says an historical backdrop from which Rabbinic Judaism and Christianity emerged. The discovery and origin. The initial discovery happened when Bedouin shepherds tracking a lost goat threw a stone into a cave and heard the sound of shattering pottery. Inside they found ceramic jars, preserving tightly wrapped, immaculate intact scrolls. This sparked an archaeological race between scholars and treasure hunters, ultimately uncovering texts across 11 different caves. Most historians believe the manuscripts belong to a hyper-conservative Jewish sect known as the Essenes. All right, we're going to talk about a little bit about these people because these people are fucking nuts. So that's who they belong to. It says they lived a simple communal lifestyle at Qumran, away from the mainstream leadership in Jerusalem. The scrolls were likely hidden in the caves for safekeeping right before Roman legions destroyed the settlement around 68 CE during the First Jewish-Roman War. It says... content of the collection. The library consists of tens of thousands of fragmented pieces written mostly on animal skins, parchment, and papyrus, with one unique document etched on copper. The texts are primarily written in Hebrew, with significant portions in Aramaic and Greek. Scholars categorize the library in 3 major groups. Biblical scrolls, approximately 40%, fragments or complete copies of every book in the Hebrew Bible, except for the book of Esther. Notable discoveries include the nearly pristine Great Isaiah Scroll and a copy of the Ten Commandments. So I was wrong. It's 40%. Okay, 40% is actually biblical. All right, which is less. I think I read somewhere else it was 90. It's 90%. Again, the internet goes off. It says apocryphal texts, approximately 30%. It says ancient Jewish religious books that were not part of the ultimately included and finalized canon of the Hebrew, such as the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees. See, the Dead Sea Scrolls are crazy, man. They're crazy. They're nuts. Again, the biblical scrolls part, that's fine, okay? But the rest are crazy. That's why the NRSV, I'm pretty sure the percentage of the Dead Sea Scrolls they're using are the biblical scrolls. I'm sure they're not incorporating anything for the book of Jubilees in. And then sectarian scrolls, all right, it says, or sectarian scrolls, approximately 30%. Original documents detailing strict rules, finances, beliefs, and apocalyptic expectations of the Qumran community. Prominent examples include the community rule and the war scroll, which predicts a final cosmic battle between good and evil. Historical significance, it says... contrary to the initial pop culture conspiracy theories, the scrolls do not mention Jesus. That's what they say. Yahushua is his real name. Early Christians or lost alternative books of the Bible. Instead, they are celebrated for 2 foundational reasons. Number 1, textual accuracy. They reveal the text of the Hebrew Bible remained remarkably stable and accurately copied across a millennium of transmission, which shows you that's not bullshit, all right? There's no other book that has remained that stable over that long of a period of time. It's not. Okay, and it shows, all right, because the Lord wants his word to go out. And then 2, historical context. They prove that ancient Judaism was incredibly diverse and multifaceted, providing researchers with direct cultural, phraseological, and theological vocabulary that shaped the New Testament era. Today, a large majority of them, are preserved in the Shrine of the Book within Israel Museum in Jerusalem. But anyway, I said, what are some of the biblical contradictions and disagreements they have with the Bible we have now? Do the same for the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees. Okay, and this is the thing. Let's go and get Isaiah. Okay, Isaiah 8 and 20. Because this is the thing. If it's not according to Scripture, if it's not according, to what's in the Bible, then it's bugged out and it's crazy, and whoever said it is obviously not inspired by Yahweh Shai Shai. So this is Isaiah 8 and 20. It says, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. So if there's something that the Bible says, and then someone is saying something that's obviously in opposition, to the biblical text, then obviously there's no light in them. They don't know what they're talking about. All right. Either way, whether they're doing it purposely or unpurposely. Right. So let's go. I can close that out now. But here's some of the biblical contradictions. Right. So it says, biblical scrolls versus modern Bibles. The difference between the Dead Sea Scrolls and our modern Old Testament, based on the Masoretic text, are mostly minor spelling variations. So those are the biblical scrolls, right? It says, however, several fascinating concrete contradictions, change numbers, details, and entire storylines. Now, some of these are just, smaller things. For example, Goliath's height in 1 Samuel 17 and 4. In the modern Bible, Goliath is massive, 9 foot and 9 inches. All right, 6 cubits and a span. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, he is 6 feet and 6 inches, 4 cubits in a span. So it says, Insider Insight, the DSS, Dead Sea Scroll version, makes him a menacing warrior rather than an impossible mythological giant. Okay, well, it's not necessarily impossible, all right, but Jacob's family count. These are some inconsistencies, right? In the modern Bible, 70 people descended from Jacob and went down to Egypt. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, 4Q Exodus or Exod states there were 75 people, right? Missing verses, Deuteronomy 32 and 43. Now this one might have something, this one might actually have some truth to it, all right? Allegedly, if it's to believe it. Now, missing verses. The modern Bible, the Song of Moses, ends with a call to the nations. That's not the one. There's another one. Never mind. That's not the one. There's one in Psalms, I guess, where I guess it was supposed to be one each letter of the alphabet. And I guess there was a missing alphabet, so there's a missing part, and I guess I can't remember what the part said, so I'm not gonna. It's something about glory to the Most High or something like that. That one could be correct, not this one. Slakia. I don't know what this one is. Let me see. Missing verses: Deuteronomy 32 and 43. Modern Bible: the Song of Moses ends with a call to the nations to praise the Lord. Dead Sea Scrolls features extra lines commanding all the angels and heavenly beings to bow down and worship the Lord. So yeah, I mean, it also gives an explanation why Abraham sacrificed Isaac. So it says, a God abruptly tests Abraham out of nowhere to prove his faith. Dead Sea Scrolls, a fragmentary text, reveals a celestial, this is where it starts to get fucking crazy, reveals a celestial backstory resembling the book of Job. An adversarial angel, an adversary, all right, called Mastema, challenges God, betting that Abraham will fail the test, all right, of course, seeing if he was going to actually kill his son or not. And so within the Dead Sea Scrolls, Book of Enoch, and I believe the Book of Jubilee, they all have this angel demon. All right, he's not really a demon, but it's a adversarial, an angel that's an adversary against the Lord, which was fucking crazy. Named Mastema, okay, which is nowhere in the Bible. All right, it's completely crazy. Now, but that's what you got with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, now when we get in the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, there's some crazy shit here. Now going back in Isaiah 8 and 20, right? To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there's no light in them. Now, let's go and see. Let's go and see what we got here. What do we have to bite off and chew today? It says the Qumran caves. This is the Book of Enoch and 1 Enoch. It says the Qumran caves yielded Aramaic fragments of 1 Enoch. Okay, this was part of those scrolls. So again, the parts of the scrolls that are, based, they're biblical scrolls, those are fine mostly. All right, they have small contradictions, if anything. Not, I won't necessarily call them contradictions, but maybe slightly different wording, which is no more different than different translations. Okay, one says 6.6, the other one says 9.9. Okay, that's that's quite substantial, but again, translation however they could. And then other ones talked about the angels bowing down before the Lord. Everyone's in reference in reverence of Yahweh Bashem Shai anyway. So the angels bowing down is not something that is beyond belief. All right, but anyway, most of it's just a matter of wording and speech changes, right? But those are dealing with the biblical scrolls. All right, but all these other ones that happen to be found amongst the biblical scrolls, all right, these ones are crazy. Okay, the other ones, sure, mind you, that was on what they say, 40%. All right, what about the other half? All right, so that anyway, let's 40% compared to 60%, 40% right, 60% crazy. Come on now. I mean, and 60% is crazy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The 40%, sure, they're just older versions with a slightly different translation of that we are familiar with within the Masoretic text. All right, and also the Old Testament as well. Okay, so it says the Qumran caves, Book of Enoch, yielded Aramaic fragments of First Enoch. Now, this is not, as the Elder Menata Zatba always mentions, and I believe the Apostles as well. Again, I'm not in GMS, but that's who I learned from. I recommend you do the same if you want to learn. All right, or individuals that learn from under them, because if not, you might be learning from someone that reads the Book of Enoch. So vet your teachers, man. Vet them. Make sure they're teaching the right thing, and that goes for me as well. Okay, if I say anything wrong, I need to be checked on that as well. None of us are above correction. Okay, so it says the Qumran caves had fragments of First Enoch, and again, like I was saying, the Elder Menata Zakba down there in GMS South Carolina. All right, that's GMS South Carolina 08 is his page, as well as the Apostles, I believe, mention it. Maybe not, I don't know if I've necessarily heard the Apostles, but I know that Elder Menata Zatba has mentioned it, and if he said something wrong, the Apostles would check him. Is that there is or was, all right, a actual Book of Enoch, but this one, all right, that's floating out there is not, all right, and why? Because it's fucking crazy. You should be able to do study to show thyself approved, all right. You should be able to have that to rightly divide the truth, as it says, to be able to know, okay, this shit is fucking nuts, or oh, this has some substantiality to it. Well, let's get into it and see how crazy these are. It says Enoch directly contradicts the modern Genesis narrative on the origin of human sin. Genesis tradition: sin entered via Adam and Eve eating forbidden fruit in Eden. If you really want to specifically go down to it, it came through Eve. Through her we all die. Let's go and prove that. Now, I believe this is an Apocrypha. And again, just wanted to show you, will the Apocrypha, no, was the Apocrypha in the Bible for longer than it's been removed. I always like to show this to people, say it's Apocrypha. The Apocrypha's not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. That's because it got removed. All right, but it was in the Bible for thousands of years. Okay, it said, yes, the Apocrypha was included in Christian Bibles for over 1,500 years, dating back to ancient texts like the Septuagint and the Vulgate. While it's only been omitted from most Protestant Bibles, it was the Protestants that got it removed, all right, for about 100 to 140 years. Okay, so less than even the foundation of America, because America's approaching its 250, specifically the United States of America. And mind you, that's who we're speaking of when we say America being destroyed. It's specifically the USA, the United States of America. Mexico's not getting destroyed, neither is Canada, but they're gonna feel the effects. It's not gonna be so hot for them. Well, it is gonna be hot for them, no pun intended. But the United States of America has only been around for 250 years, almost 249. Coming July 4th. Next month it will be 250, but it hasn't even, these books haven't even been removed for the entirety of America. All right, they were in there, all right, but they've only been removed for about 100 to 140 years. So come on, man. Why? Because they were debated. All right, well, maybe they weren't inspired. Maybe they were. This isn't like these other scrolls. These things are fucking crazy. No, the Apocrypha, it fits perfectly right in between the Old Testament and New Testament, and it adds a lot of context, and there's a lot of truth in there. But that's why they don't want it going out. All right, the Protestants had a bone to pick. Okay, with the Apocrypha. So Ecclesiasticus within the Apocrypha 25 and 24, it says, "Of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die." Now a lot of people might get mad about that, but well, it showed you Eve went off. Right? Well, so did Adam. All right. Well, Adam's sin, I'm not going to say it was a lesser sin. All right. But in the total overview of it, Eve's sin, all right, was disobeying the Lord. Okay. And Adam's sin was not necessarily disobeying the Lord, while that was done by eating the fruit of the knowledge. All right, and mind you, it wasn't an apple. I was just, learning of those things. It was mainly because he trusted in a woman. Okay, his sin was listening to and following after the actions of a woman. Okay, it's a sin to follow after the ways of a woman. Yeah, if it's wickedness. Okay, yeah, if it's wickedness. All right, if she says, "Come on, we're gonna go down the street. We're gonna have some pie." That's not wickedness, all right? But if she says, "Come on, we're going to go down the street and go to a crab boil," and you follow her, yeah, you followed her into wickedness, and that was your sin, okay? You followed someone into wickedness. In this case, it happened to be specifically a woman, which shows you, all right, one, women are the weaker vessels, which it also says within the scripture, and they're more prone to demonic attack, all right? Because mind you, it wasn't a literal serpent that was in there, okay? And that's the other thing. The people of the Second Temple period, they were literalists. Okay, what is a literalist? Okay, come on, man, literalist. Okay, a literalist is a person who interprets words, texts, or statements in the most basic, exact, and primary sense, without considering metaphorical, allegorical, or hidden meanings. Okay, religion, biblical and Quranic. In theology, a literalist believes that sacred texts like the Bible, Quran, are the exact, unvarnished word of Yahweh. It says they believe historical and miraculous events described in the text, such as the creation of the world in 6 literal days or virgin births, happened exactly as written. And then a lot of Christians these days are literalists. They say, "Oh, it's a virgin birth." No, she got popped. Okay, Mary got popped. She had sex. Okay. And the other thing is they like to say, "Oh, well, they ate the fruit, all right, and it must have been an apple." No, the fruit wasn't literally fruit, all right? It was referring to forbidden knowledge. Okay, the serpent wasn't a literal serpent, all right? It was the spirit of man, all right? That same spirit that would end up in Esau, Cain, and later on Esau, all right? But it's really, Satan, okay? The devil, all right? That devilish spirit. That's the same spirit that was talking and, being cunning and conniving to Eve, okay? And that shows you that Eve has a long-standing relationship, all right, with the devil, okay? And that's why she, loves Esau so much to this day, because she has a long-standing relationship with that demonic spirit that dwells within him, all right? That same thing, within Cain, all right, going back to the garden, man, the serpent, all right? But they're literalists, so they think, for example, they would read a scripture talking about the tares and the wheat, all right, and they would think that, literally that the Lord just put a whole thing in there about, cultivating wheat, all right. Well, no, it's metaphorical, all right. It's parabolic, okay. But literalists don't believe in parabolic writings, all right. They just think it literally means what it means, okay. So they're crazy. It's not a scholarly way to go around things. But the people were the Essenes literalists, and these were the people that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Essenes were literalists when it came to practicing religious law, but they were decidedly non-literalists when interpreting biblical prophecy. Okay, what about the book of Enoch and Jubilees? Because those were like more literalistic approaches. See, we're going to get into that. They had an issue with the calendar and a lot of stuff. It says the book of Enoch and the book of Jubilees provide the ultimate proof of how the Essenes balanced strict literalism with complex mysticism. The Essenes did not view those texts as mere folklore. They possessed the more physical copies of Enoch and Jubilees in their Dead Sea Scroll library than almost any book in the Hebrew Bible, which means they treated them as authoritative. So they had more of those than any books of the Hebrew Bible. Again, that's why that was only 40%. Most of that shit was just bugged out craziness. It says, meaning they treated them as authoritative, inspired scripture. So it says the interpretation of these books mirrors their split approach to reality. Hyper literal interpretation of the cosmic rules combined with mystical interpretation of spiritual realities. Well, it was mostly hyper literalism. So they thought that, you know, things that were literal were literal. All right. They'd think that literally, you know, Eve was actually speaking to a real snake. We get into that. They thought that all of the animals originally spoke Hebrew before the Tower of Babel and sin. These people were crazy. So we're going to talk about that, right? So, Enoch, all right, the core collision, generous tradition, as we were just reading, you know, really through sin, through the woman came sin, through her we all die. That's generous tradition. It says sin entered via Adam and Eve, eating the forbidden fruit in Eden. We got the scripture specifically dealing with Eve. Enoch tradition. Here's what the book of Enoch thinks. They think that sin entered via rebellious angels, also known as the Nephilim, no, maybe it wasn't the Nephilim. The rebellious angels against the Lord, all right, impregnated human women. Okay, and that's when the Nephilim came about. Okay, they were called the Watchers, but that's when the Nephilim came about. They say that angels impregnated human women, and that the children that they bore were actually the Nephilim. All right, and that it's bugged out, man. Come on. All right, if they speak not according to this word, is because there's no light in them. Where's that in the Bible? It's not, because it's bugged out. All right, it's some shit that they just made up. All right, they just made it up. It says the blame for human evil. It says modern Bible, humanity falls because of Adam and Eve's disobedience in Eden. Enoch, the ultimate corruption of the earth, is blamed on rebellious angels called the Watchers, who descended to earth, mated with women, and taught humanity forbidden arts like sorcery, metallurgy, and weapon making. Yeah, I had a note on that. They believe that there was a demon, was it Azazel? And they believe that it was a fallen angel, all right, an angel that rebelled from Yahweh, all right, and smuggled forbidden knowledge down from the holy realms, all right, and as demons, and, you know, taught men to how to make swords and women to make makeup. All right, you can go and look that up. Matter of fact, I'm gonna duplicate this. Is it true that they believe demons smuggled hidden, forbidden knowledge on making swords and makeup and gave them to man? And it should say yes, because I was looking into that earlier. It was in the original text. It says, yes, it's entirely true according to the text. The book of Enoch, first Enoch, has a specific faction of fallen angels known as the Watchers, as it was just mentioned, that they did not just sleep with human women. They acted as ancient smugglers of divine secret. And the Lord was like, oh no. He allowed him to get smuggled. It's stupid, right? All these different texts interfere with the Bible because it makes it seem like the Lord's not omnipotent, all right? And he is omnipotent, all right? He controls all, but all these books make it seem like he can't do nothing. He's constantly letting things slip through the cracks. It says, trading forbidden heavenly knowledge for women, human affection. Here it is. The text attributes rapid corruption of human civilization. Let's read it. It's according to the angelic curriculum of sin. According to 1 Enoch chapter 8, different fallen angels specialized in teaching different forbidden technologies. Azazel, the leader of the craft, he taught men how to forge swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. He also introduced metallurgy, showing humans how to extract metals from the earth and work with gold and silver. Azazel, the master of cosmetics. Alongside weapons, Azazel taught women the art of making up their eyes, antimony and eyeliner, how to use beautifying stones, and how to dye fabrics into alluring, vibrant colors. What are you talking about? Matter of fact, I'm curious. Now, I don't know if it necessarily does. Does the Bible ever mention dyeing clothes? Yes, it mentions the dyeing of clothes. While it rarely details the step-by-step process, it heavily emphasizes the resulting vibrant colors and their social, religious, and economic importance in the ancient world. What scriptures? in the KJV. Well, yeah, man, I talked about a border of blue. How else would you get a border of blue, right? Let's go and get that one. Mentioned blue dye, right? This is made for a biblical garment, right? The exact process, right? So Numbers 15 and 38, right? It says that speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a riband of blue. Okay, so how would you have gotten blue? Okay, through dye. Okay, let's see. Let's go and read them. Ram skins dyed red, and badger skins and shittim wood, Exodus 25 and 5. So there you go. Dyed skins. Also repeated in Exodus 26 and 14, Exodus 35 and 7, Exodus 35 and 23, Exodus 36 and 19, Exodus 39 and 34, and then in there's a well, that's yeah, it's a little bit different, I think, but and then Ezekiel 23 and 15, girded with girdles up to their loin, exceeding in dyed attire upon their heads, all of them princes to look to. Blue, purple, and scarlet fabrics. Exodus 26 and 1. Moreover, there shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, with cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them. So again, the Lord directly said, to use dyes. So no, it wasn't forbidden knowledge that was smuggled by some demon named Azazel. All right, that's fucking bugged out. All right, and a lot of these demons aren't even fucking real. All right, Azazel and all these different things. They're not even mentioned in the Bible. Okay, they're not even mentioned in the Bible. Okay, they're mentioned in late Second Temple works, because the Second Temple era was full of fucking bug outs, man. They were nuts. They were crazy. Okay, they were crazy. Azazel, all right, was not mentioned in the Bible. All right, you can go and go here and type in Azazel. Where is he? Okay, so no, and then there's people out in the world that think some crazy shit. All right, about whatever. Like for example, there is one demon named in the Bible, Belial. All right, and a lot of people think that. I remember when I was young, he watched a lot of those ghost stories, and my dad would like to watch a lot of bugged out shit. My dad's still pretty fucking bugged out to this day. That's why he can't get the truth, because he's bugged out a lot. He believes in aliens and all this crazy shit. I tried explaining it to him, and my dad's like, "No, I think there are some green men, and gray men." And all right, man. All right, whatever you say. Because he watched Ancient Aliens and all these different books, and were kind of really fucked up his mind, because he was always a conspiracy theorist. But again, some of those conspiracies are correct. Some of those are just poison in the well. And I mentioned that. Some of these things are crazy. And all the little green men from outer space that was poison in the well to keep you thinking that, oh, those spaceships, it's actually little green men flying around, and not, melanated men that are really angels and the Lord himself flying around, all right, staking out America and visiting the earth, all right, and preparing to judge this place, all right, because that doesn't sound too well, does it? Not for those that are not Israelites. It sounds horrible. All right, it sounds terrifying. So little green men, who maybe they'll probe you, maybe they'll stick stuff up your butt. That's how you know they were made by Esau, because they're little green men that go around and like to stick shit up your ass. It's obviously a fucking manufactured lie by Esau, because of course he had to add sticking shit up your butt. Anything. Esau loves sticking shit up their butt, right? So that's what they did at the homosexual spirit. Oh, they're gonna come down and put shit up your ass. The fuck? Why would you have to do that? Well, they're gonna probe you to find out who you are. You wouldn't have to do that. You wouldn't have to do that through your ass, okay? Especially in advanced civilization like aliens, right? If you're going off of all the things they say about these so-called little critters, no, they could probably just take a DNA swab and have that be that. They don't need to fucking shove a rod up your ass. It's ridiculous. It's just a sexual fantasy, is what it is. It's Esau's sexual fantasy, getting shit shoved up their ass. But anyway, I remember my dad was like, we watched some like ghost like the ghost hunters or whatever, and they're like, oh, there's a ancient demon that's dwelling within this house, and I'm gonna write his name down because you can't even speak it without giving power. And the name was Belial. You could say it. You're not going to give them power. You can't give any power, all right? The only power that any of these things can get is whatever power the Lord allows them to have, all right? They can't go and fucking start chewing off bits of power without the Lord. These demons, first of all, they work for the Lord. Okay, they don't work for themselves. They're not working for man or themselves or doing anything. They work for the Lord. All right, they're essentially spiritual forms of stumbling blocks. If you really want to get down to it, they come and test people and try to put a stumbling block on you and see. The Lord says, I trust this man. I think he's got it. And these demons, Satan himself, even at one time, said, oh, that's because you're so good to him. Speaking of Job, if you touch his flesh, he'll curse you to your face. Roughly paraphrasing, of course. And he said, "Go ahead. Don't kill him, but he's in the palm of your hand. Go ahead and do what you need to do." And of course, what befell him, right? And it's largely debated on how long that affliction was upon him. All right. Some say it was a couple weeks. Some say it was a couple months. Some say it was a couple years. Some say it was a good majority of his life. Now, I'm inclined to believe it was a good majority of his life. All right, to show you it was a really an ultimate test. But yeah, man, it could have been 17 years, all right? Even 7 years ago, something like that would be crazy. But, the Lord allowed him to find a way through, and he ended up, being rewarded heavily, all right? Not before a good chewing out, all right? Saying, were you here when I made this? No. Were you here when I did this? No. All right? Basically, keeping him in his lane. Because he was being, I guess, a little over-righteous, right? Just a little too overzealous, all right? And the Lord put him in. It wasn't a big chew out. It was like an admonition or a reproval, not like really a rebuke, right? As hard as oh, you evil. No, it wasn't really like that. If you read that, but so yeah, I mean these instead, they say, oh, you don't say the word Belial, you'll get it. That's bugged out, all right? That's one that's actually in the Bible, but Azrael and all these different, you can go and look up what demons are actually named in the Bible. All right, what demons are named within the Bible? KJV, and they like to classify Leviathan, all right, as a demon, and Legion, all right. They try to say that's a demon. And that's not really a demon. That's a demon, all right. I'm dumb. That's not a demon. That's demons. All right. They said it. Okay. It was like a body of demons. Okay. It says Mark 5:9 and Luke 8:30. It says this is the text. It says, and he asked him, "What is thy name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." All right. Well, that's that. There's many. All right. Many demons. All right. So Legion is really just a name for a legion of demons. All right, they encompass legion. They make up legion, but it's really a body of demons. Okay, there you go. Apollyon, Abaddon. All right, and they, which again is an angel, not a demon. It says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. It doesn't say the demon of the bottomless pit. All right, it says whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon or Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Okay, and Beelzebub. It says Matthew 12:24. But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "This fellow did not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils." All right. So again, another name, Belial. All right, we already mentioned that one. Lucifer. Lucifer is not necessarily a demon. Again, but pagan gods, Molech, Chemosh, Dagon, and these are like not, they're pagan gods, but they're they're demonic, all right, but they're not really devils. Okay, that's funny. The Enoch scrolls, Asmodeus and Azazel. We're really going back up. Yeah, Abaddon, but you hear all these things like, oh, Asmodeus and Azazel, and those aren't actual real demons. All right, I mean, it shows you which ones are named here. Okay, the other ones, no. Okay, they're making some shit up. Okay, let's look at some more made up shit. You got Semjaza, taught enchantment, sorcery, botanical root cutting. Amoros taught the resolving of enchantments and how to cast counter spells. Barakwajal taught astrology, and first of all, a lot of these words aren't even in Hebrew. So what the fuck are you talking about? Some of them are, but some of them are like weird bastardized forms that aren't standard. Cockabell taught the constellations, so now the constellations are demonic. All right, shouldn't know about those. Kazakiel, all right, taught the knowledge of the clouds, meteorology. So now knowing about clouds is evil. Just stupid. Oh, can't forget Sariel taught the courses and phases of the moon. All right, because knowing the phases of the moon is wicked. Right? Shouldn't know that. It's not like you need those for the seasons. Well, going into the book of Jubilee, I believe, they think that basing everything off the moon is actually wicked. You should really be basing it off the sun. Stupid. We're gonna get into that. So I think it's right down here. But anyway, I'm gonna skip through some of these things because again, we've already been going on for an hour, and I still haven't got through some of these things. Here's one: the Book of Jubilees. Okay, let's get another scripture. Let's get 1 John 4:1. It says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of Yahweh, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." So there's a lot of, when you hear something like this, these people were false prophets. All right, back then, these Essenes people, they were false prophets. So hearing this, you'd be like, oh, these people are bugged out. They're crazy. They're nuts. All right, they're nuts. But again, Jake likes to go, and that's why I'm making a lesson about this, because I was looking into it. But a lot of Jake likes those pseudepigrapha. They like the Book of Enoch. They like the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Adam and Eve. All these different fucked up crazy things, right? And they're not according to scripture, man. They're just bugged out. All right, well, you don't want to open your mind. You're right, I don't want to open my mind. I don't want my fucking brain to fall out. All right, so I'll keep my mind closed, thank you very much. It's around the Bible. All right, I'm not gonna let any of this extra bullshit to flow in and to fucking bug me out. All right, have me sit over here fucking using a calculator, all right, to use the what is that shit, the Nation of Islam sacred multiplication or sacred math. What is that shit? What is that? 5% nation. There was another one. The supreme mathematics. Right? 1 is knowledge, and 2 is, all these different things, and, the state, and, 6 is equality, and the state to be balanced, and the elements of life, man. And look, I mean, a lot of those Nation of Islam guys, they're cool guys to talk to. I don't have anything personally against them. I have, things against their doctrine. All right, but like I said, I knew a Nation of Islam guy. They're cool guys. I mean, they're fine to talk to, but they got a lot of crazy bugged out shit, man. They got a lot of crazy bugged out shit they believe. And one of those things is the supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet. Of course, you got ancient Hebrew geometria, all right, which has some balance, but this is not really according to, again, it's not according to scripture. It's not according to doctrine, which we have learned. So it's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, I wanted to get into the Book of Jubilees and their 364-day calendar issue that they had. So the modern Bible, Jewish tradition, follows a lunar-based calendar, all right? It says follows a lunar-based calendar, approximately 354 days, requiring shifting dates for holy days. Jubilees demands a rigid 364-day solar calendar divided into exactly 52 weeks. It says Jubilee explicitly curses anyone who uses the lunar calendar, claiming that it causes people to celebrate holy days on the secular days, polluting God's timeline. And they call them demonic. All right, they said it was demonic to use the moon, all right, the lunar calendar. Well, all right. Right here, Psalm 104:19. This is why, again, you have to look into things. Okay, Psalms 104:19. He appointed the moon for seasons; the sun knoweth his going down. So, if you, in matter of fact, if you go into this in the Blue Letter Bible, so he appointed the moon for seasons. Okay, now seasons goes back to the word
Strong's H 4150. Moed.
Okay. A solemn assembly. Okay. A season, specifically a festival. Okay. A holiday. A holy day. Okay. So, going into what it means, what does it mean going back into appointment? So, a holy day. Okay. It means a holy day. Excuse me. A holy day. All right. A solemn day. A day of solemnity. So yeah. But no, they think that it was bad. It was bad because, it causes you to celebrate holy days on secular days, and it's polluting God's timeline. Nuts. Here another one. Here's another crazy bugged out example. Let me see. We already got this one. I'm just chucking off my notes. Okay, got those ones. So we're gonna get into 200 angels in the star prison too. Yeah, the star prison already sounds crazy. Here's one though. Exodus 14. Who hardened Pharaoh's heart? In the modern Bible, Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart. Okay. In Jubilees, the demonic prince Mastema hardens Pharaoh's heart and assists the Egyptian magicians. There you go. There you go. All right. Jubilees attempts to solve the theological issue of a good God causing Pharaoh to sin. Well, because he controls all. Right? He controls all, and you tried to shift it because you couldn't understand it. All right, it was a theological issue. We couldn't understand. You couldn't understand it because you don't have. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. I was gonna go get another scripture, but that one's fine enough. Just adding shit, man. You're not supposed to be adding shit. Whoever taketh away, I will take his name out of the book of life. This is take away. Oh, how did I get Luke? My bad. There it is. Revelation 22 and 18 to 19. You're not just supposed to add shit. All right. It says, for I testify unto every man that heareth. This is Revelation 22 and 18 through 19. Again, I want to call it and read it. For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man shall add unto these things, Yahweh shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, Yahweh shall take away his part out of the book of life, and out of the holy city, and from the things that are written, which are written in this book. So that's what, it's pretty plain, not to add shit, all right, and not to take, blessed things away. But that's what they like to do. They like to just take things away because they're crazy, man. They're crazy. Let's see. Is a silent wife of Cain. Cain kills Abel, gets banished, and suddenly has a wife with zero explanation. Jubilees explains that his wife was actually his sister. Right? How about the 200 angels that rebelled? I got some of these written down. It says the story of the 200 angels who rebelled, Book of Enoch, known as the Watchers. Okay, so that is the Watchers. We already touched on that. But what about the star prison? Okay, that's probably the craziest shit. How about the star prison? This one was fucking nuts. Let me grab a drink. So, the star prison, also described as the prison of the stars and the host of the heaven, is a terrifying cosmic location that Enoch visited during a guiding tour of the universe led by the archangel Uriel. Let's see. Now, I'm not too familiar with all the archangels, but I don't think I've ever really heard this name too much. So, no, it was not mentioned as an archangel. Okay. Name's Uriel, but not as an archangel. Okay. Matter of fact, I know Michael. Who are the archangels mentioned in the KJV? Michael, Gabriel, and Uriel. Okay, so it's in the Apocrypha. Okay, cool. So this one does exist because it's 3. And I remember because the apostles just the other day were talking about we only know the names of 3. So Michael, Gabriel, and Uriel, I believe. And again, if I'm wrong, correct me on that. I'm not going to speak too much on it because I'm not too well versed on that. But 2 Esdras 4:1 does, and that's in the Apocrypha, does actually have Uriel in it. Okay, so there you go. So anyway, this part's still bullshit, even though it uses the name. Again, Enoch was an actual individual as well. So, led by Archangel Uriel, it says detailed primarily in chapters 18 and 21 of the book of Enoch. It represents a major conceptual difference between traditional biblical views and outer space. In ancient Hebrew cosmology, stars were not just balls of burning gas. They were viewed as living celestial entities or divine beings, often synonymous with angels. With these stars, when these stars, I don't know where this is coming from, when these stars rebelled, again, all this rebelling angels. It's always about rebelling angels. Look, Lord's not going to have them rebel if you don't want them to rebel. It says Yahweh built a literal prison for them at the edge of existence. So the star prison is where they kept the stars that, rebelled and didn't do what the Lord told. It's fucking dumb, man. It's crazy. It says Enoch describes the prison as the end of heaven and earth. It's a chaotic void-like space outside the structured universe. There's no sky above it, and there's no earth beneath it. There's no water, and there are no birds. It's empty, waste, and horrible. Where are they in the star prison? Stars transgress the direct commandment of Yahweh at the beginning of their creation. Well, man, this is nuts. Okay, you should be able to read that and use your discernment. You should be able to discern and say, okay, that's fucking crazy, man. That's wild. But a lot of people can't. Okay, and just because you use the names of an actual individual, don't mean it's correct. Let's okay. What about the flood? Because they believed the flood was actually just to kill these giant Nephilim that were eating all the food up, right? And, they end up becoming the demons that we know today. So it says, the real reason for the flood, genetic pollution. In Genesis 6, Yahweh sends the flood because the wickedness of man was great in the earth. That's what we know, right? But in Enoch and Jubilees, humanity is treated almost like victims. The flood is necessary because the earth has been physically and spiritually bioengineered into a nightmare. Why? Cannibalistic giants. The Nephilim grew so massive they consumed all the earth's food and began eating humans, and finally resorted to cannibalism and drinking blood, polluting the soil. That's fucking crazy. The Book of Enoch reveals that the human wives, the 200 Watchers, did not drown like normal humans. Instead, their hybrid natures caused them to transform into sirens, demonic mermaids, and continue to lure humans into their destruction. Crazy. Hey, man, I'm a big fan of a mermaid, too, and all those, folk tales and, medieval stuff, and sirens, how they sang and lured sailors to their death. They're interesting stories, but that's what they are. Stories. They're not theological, edifying content. They're just stories, man. They're just stories, okay? Like Little Red Riding Hood. That's all they are, okay? They're not, you don't try to have to fucking fit them in, right, into the Bible. No, they're actually really there. No, they're not, man. They're not. You already got some fantastical things within the Bible. I mean, you got, dragons. Ain't that enough for you, man? You got to go and, anyway. So there was that one. What's this one? Alien baby scare. What the fuck is this? It says, because the human gene pool was so heavily corrupted by the Watchers, Noah's birth caused a massive panic. First Enoch records that where Noah was born, his body was whiter than snow. That's bullshit. It says, redder than a rose, and his hair was white as wool, and his eyes shone like the sun, lighting up the entire house. This would have made him an Edomite. It's bullshit. That means he was extremely leprous then, right? Noah's father, Lamech, was terrified, and he ran to the father, Methuselah, crying, I have begotten a strange son, diverse and unlike man, resembling the sons of the angels of heaven. I fear some miracle will be wrought on the earth in his days. Nuts, right? Crazy, crazy, crazy. So we got that one. What else do we got? Oh, here it is. Look. The birth of demons. Here it is. I was just about to look this up. This is the other one. This one's fucking crazy. All right, they're all crazy. Here, this is all you need to know, Jake. You want to learn about the Book of Enoch? You want to learn about the Book of Jubilees? Well, here, we're doing it today. You want to look into it? Well, it's fucking crazy, man. It's all crazy, and it's not scriptural. Okay, let's go and get Galatians 1 and 9. because I suffer from not getting enough scripture sometimes when I'm getting in these deep dives. Galatians 9 and 1, or 1 and 9. There I go with the numbers. Galatians 1 and 9. As we said before, so say I now again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you than that ye have received, let him be accursed. That man's going to be accursed, telling you, did you know it was actually the demons that came up and they actually came up from the ground and they did all the crazy shit and they actually started, there was actually 90% of demons, but there was only 10 that were left, and those are the demons we know now because they're actually giant Nephilim that were going around eating cannibals. They were being crazy people, and they were all led by Mastema because, he was, what the fuck are you talking about? You bug out. Crazy, man. Crazy. Go and talk to one of these guys too. Now, I implore you, if you want to go and look into the book of Jubilee go and talk to someone that believes in them and see how they act. They're nuts. They're nuts, man. Unkempt. All right. Don't pick their hair out. All right. Their hair's got all a bunch of fucking balls and knots in it. All right. You can tell they don't, keep care of their shit. All right. They don't use no decent hair product in it. All right. They don't know anything. They got mats and their hair's all balled up. They're crazy as shit. All right. I guarantee their fingertips smell like blunts. I guarantee it smells like a fucking the nicotine stain. I guarantee their tip of their fingers are a little bit yellow. All right, I guarantee it, man, because these people are fucking nuts, man. Nuts. All right, I bet they got that black around their lips showing that they smoke blunts all the fucking time. These people are crazy. They're nuts. All right, they're nuts, man. All right. And cannabis is not an evil thing to consume. You can consume marijuana. All right. Apostles and elders have talked about it. You just can't use it to purposely be getting high all the time. All right. But, if you need it for medicinal purposes or, to sleep, or you have a hard time with relaxation in certain situations, you can, use it, not abuse it. All right. And you most certainly cannot, smoke it for fun. All right. That's not something you can do. You can't really smoke it like that. Now, I'm not going to go too far into the whole aspect of smoking, all right, because Apostle Tahari has specifically mentioned certain things with the smoking of it, but in general, you're not supposed to be smoking it like that, all right? That's more so on a prescriptional level, okay? Which, again, that was a lesson that was made a while ago. It basically, all he basically said was, if it's prescribed for you to take it a certain way, well, you take it a certain type of way, and that's where mercy falls in. But I don't like to talk about that a lot. Don't even go into that because a lot of Jake's going to take that as, we can smoke weed because Apostle Tahari said you can smoke weed. Not in the capacity that you're thinking of, all right? Not in the capacity that you're thinking of. But yeah, a while ago there was a live camp. There's still videos of it. But yeah, there was some things that were said. But again, don't go crazy thinking about it because, again, you have to use your spiritual. I mean, even Apostle Gabar, when I first heard it, I was like, okay. But then I watched it a couple times. I understand what the Apostle Tahari is talking about, okay? If you have a medical license and they say you need to specifically smoke it, all right, then that's fine, all right? But half the time that doesn't happen. You can go and look that up. You can go and type in. And again, I don't like to bring out this information. If you bug out, hey, it's not on me, man, all right? Apostle Tahari weed. Right here. This is the one. Okay? This is the one. I didn't see this one. I'll have to watch that one later. But yeah. Some of these might be... Let's see what's said, first of all.
Or not. Harsh language. It's not a sin.
So you ain't cussing in the sin.
Nope. Right in the Bible.
What about smoking weed?
Smoking weed.
Working on myself.
Smoking in itself, you putting impure toxins in your body.
Yeah, smoking weed is not a sin if you're smoking the good. To hard. See, you done told on yourself. I don't like weed at all. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like it at all. Period. Okay. I only smoked weed one time, and I took a shotgun from a chick because I was trying to. That's back when I was in my 20s. I was trying to get with her. So she's smoking a joint. She gave me a contact high. That's one, but I didn't feel nothing. But I don't like that smoke. I don't like that smell of that stuff. But is it in the law that you can't smoke a joint? No. Now, if you grew it yourself and doctors say you can take it, down in Jamaica they found out hardly nobody has Rastas don't get cataracts, and they did tests. Esau did. Why these Rastafarians don't get cataracts? They did a test. What did they eat in the air that they breathe? And they found out it was the chalice that they were smoking. That there was a chemical in chalice that takes away cataracts. They did further research, And doctors did further research, and they realized that it does more than take away cataracts or prevents or reverse cataracts. It does a lot of things. So now they made it. Goddamn, the fuck hit this car? This motherfucker plowed through like 3 cars. The hell? And I'm watching Alex Jones on my Roku TV. You know, you got the live thing. I got it going all day. I got it on mute. But anyway, so if a guy's smoking it and he grows it legally, you know, he gets it from the doctor. The doctor said this will help you. It helps certain ailments. One of them is cataracts.
Yep.
It reverses certain things.
Good for
So
a bunch of stuff.
You can't say it's not lawful, but I don't expect the brother to come to camp smelling like that stuff or smoking it while he's teaching.
Yep.
You know?
And then he goes on to say, you know, you make sure you're doing a lawful, you know, according, you know, lawfully as in according to Esau, you know, because again, you don't want to be busted. Some places it's still felony, man. Here in Vegas, you can go and get it, and I don't smoke it personally. I used to smoke it, but I don't smoke it personally. But I'm also not gonna say I'd never consume it. All right, like never. I have issues with you know, sleeping and stuff like that. Also, you know, the worldly diagnosis of ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and when I was consuming marijuana back in the day before I came into this truth, it actually helped with my you know, they want you to go and get on Adderall. Okay, and which is basically a synthesized form of meth. All right, it would be much better to be on cannabis. All right, but again, Jake, and a lot of, and you saw that Jake on the comment board. He was saying, you know, I felt like it was he being sarcastic. You're not understanding what he's saying. Okay, and what the Apostle Tahar was saying here is that in a normal sense, yeah, if you're using it medicinally, or you shouldn't be using it just to get fucked up as possible all the time, as you just want to get high, just want to get high, just want to get high, just want to get high. Same, you shouldn't be getting drunk all the fucking time. Right? There's a lot of people that just constantly want to be getting drunk. You shouldn't be getting drunk like that, man. That's not something you should be doing. You should have more times that you're sober than being intoxicated. Okay? And like he said, you know, I don't want people smoking that shit and making lessons. Because again, you're not supposed to be all high, fucked up, or drunk making lessons either. You're not supposed to be doing that. But what he was saying is technically it's not anywhere in the scriptures that smoking it is a sin. Smoking cigarettes, that's an addiction and finding yourself into that. But again, as the Apostle of the Heart, he went out and basically corrected, that, when Elder Benata Zatba said that. So technically, because for a while you heard a lot of people say, "Oh, smoking it." Well, you shouldn't be smoking it for pure entertainment, pure enjoyment, just to do it, and in a secular way, like Jake does it out in the world. They're sitting here smoking blunts and getting fucked up all the time and doing it. That's not no. All right, they're not doing it for health reasons. All right, these people aren't doing it for health reasons, to help their health or to help them sleep or whatever. They're using it to be in the spirit of mirth, constantly. Okay, constantly. Again, like I said, I don't smoke the shit. I used to smoke the shit, but I don't do it. All right, but if this caused you to bug out, hey, at the end of the day, I'm not going to really worry about it, because hey, I didn't cause you to bug out. I let the Apostle Tahar speak. If you bug out, this is one of the things I've held back on touching on that, because a lot of and again, that's why you don't see a whole bunch of lessons about weed, because a lot of Jake will bug out over that shit. And if you bug out, hey man, that's on you. That shows you the Lord wasn't dealing with you. All right, the Apostle Tahar said what he said. If you can't get it, you can't get it. If you get it, great. All right, yes, you can technically consume it. If the doctor gives you a prescription that says you have to smoke it because of cataracts, then I guess you have to smoke it. All right, again, that's what we have mercy for in the first place. But Jake ain't worried about it to go in for some cataracts. Jake ain't worried about it to help them get some sleep. Okay, Jake ain't worried about that. Jake's worried about it to use it like that hard liquor. All right, there's another thing. Even the apostles say you shouldn't even be drinking hard liquor like that, because that shit's horrible for your body. Okay, now in the Bible, is it going to say anything to worry about? No, you should not drink hard liquor. No, it talks about strong drink, but the modern version of hard liquor, those brown liquors, they're horrible for your gut. All right, if you had to choose between a brown liquor or cannabis, you'd be better off with the cannabis, right? In another video, it was a street teaching video that the Apostle Tahar said. He said, if anything that Esau says, is bad to stay away from, it probably has some good stuff in it, all right, referring to cannabis. But again, if you understand it, you understand it. If you don't, you don't. That doesn't mean you should go out and buy a fucking pack of joints down at the local dispensary and fucking start smoking them up. No. But at the same time, if you had cataracts and the doctor says, well, cannabis, you're in a legal state and says you have to smoke it, then I guess you're going to have to smoke it. right? I guess it's just something having, or deal with the cataracts. Do what you do. It'd be better to do that because the other alternative for cataracts is actually getting a laser surgery. You'd be better off smoking the weed than getting a fucking surgery because you're not supposed to be doing that either. All right, surgery. You're not supposed to be having people cutting in the flesh and doing all that shit. All right, and there's more higher chances for a medical complication. All right, with that, if it can be fixed with cannabis, man, that'd be the obvious decision. All right, it came from the earth. It's a natural herb. All right, but also like the Apostle Tahar said, if you can grow it, because again, it's like the same thing with you don't know what they're putting in these cannabis, these dispensary of the cannabis. It's again, if you do it, you do it, but you have to pray over everything anyway. The everything you ingest. I mean, even if you're eating a marijuana gummy, you got to pray over it. You got to pray over everything you eat. You don't know what they could have put in that shit. But anyway, all GMOs and all that shit. But anyway. That's a tangent for another day, but a lot of I wanted to explain that since we were talking about Jake with the blunt lip. Well, I'm talking about a fucking a pothead, a stoner. I know because I was one at one point. And you start going off on these crazy bugged out fucking tangents. Here it is. You got your finger smelling like blunts and blunt wraps and shit and all this other shit. Another thing is, if you are using it medically, you wouldn't be rolling it into a fucking blunt. All right, a blunt that causes cancer. All right. That's tobacco and shit like that causes cancer, right? And nicotine is highly addictive. Okay, now I'm sure nicotine has its applications, all right, for health. Like for example, during 2020, they found out that people that were using nicotine, all right, were actually less likely to contract, all right, that thing. Okay, because I guess those same nicotine bonds the same receptors or cells that the thing bonded to, okay, the disease in itself, the sickness in itself. But again, is it something that you should be sitting around and doing? No, you're going to get addicted to it, and it's going to be ridiculous. All right, but I'm sure it has some health implications, or some good health implications, not some bad ones. But people don't use it for that. All right, people use it for an addiction. All right, to stand around smoking cigarettes. All right, and you're not supposed to be fucking smoking cigarettes in the first place. Again, it's just gonna, if you want to go and kill your body, you go right ahead, man. But anyway, but yeah, those type individuals, the dread-headed, weed smoking, black-lipped, blunt-lipped, yellow-fingered, Jake out there, they're the ones that if you go and talk about the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, those are who you're gonna run into. All right, and they're either their dreads are fucking falling out or falling apart, and they need a retwist, but you shouldn't even have dreads either. Or they're the ones with the regular afro, but their hair hasn't been picked out in 15 years, and it's all fucking clumped together. It looks ridiculous. And anyway, that's who you're gonna deal with. It's because these people are mentally unstable. All right, these people are mentally fucking unstable. Right, and you're gonna listen to these people. Yeah, we know there was the Watchers. It was crazy because no, man, you're nuts. You're nuts. All right, and then what else? I have one more, and that's about it's about Eve not being shocked about the talking snake, and this is where they really get bugged out with this. The whole thing was bugged out, right? It says we get an explicit backstory. The modern Bible omitted because it wasn't fucking true. It says the text explains that exact day that Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, a massive cosmic shift occurred. And on that day, on that day, the mouth of all beasts and of cattle and of birds and of whatever walks and whatever moves was stopped from speaking, for they had all spoken with one another, with one mouth and with one language. So before, all the languages spoke in Hebrew. All right, all the language, all the animals were walking around speaking. Hey, how you doing? Moo moo moo. No, that's crazy. All right, there were times that the Lord opened up the mouth of the animals, specifically with the ass, to speak. All right, but they weren't walking around just fucking hooping and hollering. All right, that's not what they did. So it says the loss of animal speech wasn't a side effect. It was a specific divine punishment that happened simultaneously with humanity's exile. Yeah, so because you sinned, you can no longer talk to animals anymore. And also, to top this all off, in the Second Temple, the people that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, the scenes, they banned pooping on Sabbath. You couldn't take a shit on Sabbath. Is it true that the Essenes banned pooping on Sabbath? And it's true, they did. Yes, it's entirely true. The Essenes held what were arguably the most extreme. They're bugged out. Here's one. Be not righteous over much. This is Ecclesiastes 7 and 16 through 18. It says, be not righteous over much, neither make thyself over wise. Why should thou destroy thyself? Which shows you trying to be too deep, all right, will ultimately just destroy you, okay? And you'll be destroying yourself, all right? So, right here, yes, it is entirely true. The scenes held which were what were arguably the most extreme, hyper-strict rules regarding bodily functions in the Sabbath in the ancient world, including a total ban on defecation on the seventh day. You couldn't even shit, man. You had to hold it in. That's ridiculous, man. That's ridiculous. Can't even take a shit on Sabbath. That's stupid, man. This rule is documented both by external historical accounts and confirmed by archaeological findings at Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Historic evidence. The primary historical account comes from the famous first century Jewish Roman historian Flavius Josephus. In his work, The Jewish War, Book 2, Chapter 8, Josephus meticulously detailed the daily habits of the scene, stating, they are stricter than all other Jews in abstaining from work on the seventh day. They do not venture even to go to stool on that day. Why did they ban it? To abstain this bizarre rule, you have to look on how the Essenes viewed the intersection of Sabbath and ritual purity. Digging was considered work. On normal days, Deuteronomy 23 and 12 through 14 commanded Jews to go outside the camp, dig a hole and relieve themselves and cover it up. The Essenes took this so literally that every member was given a small ritual hatchet upon joining to dig their own personal waste holes. However, digging in the earth on Sabbath was strictly defined as manual labor work, which carried a death penalty under their law. Again, look, the Lord has mercy at the end of the day, man. I mean, what do you want to do? If you were really that deep, all right, you could have just dug the holes ahead of time. I don't fucking know. Just the distance in Sabbath travel, the Essenes believed that human waste was defiled the holy community. So their rules mandated that the latrines be built at least 2,000 to 3,000 cubits, roughly 3,000 to 4,000 feet away from living quarters. However, Jewish law prohibited a person from walking more than 1,000 to 2,000 cubits outside the town on the Sabbath. Therefore, walking all the way to a designated bathroom area was a literal violation of no travel limit. No poop prep. But to pull this off without exploding, Essene community members would rigorously fast or eat highly restricted low-fiber diets on Fridays, the day of preparation, to ensure their digestive tracts were entirely empty by sunset when the Sabbath. So they did the Friday to Saturday. Again, wrong. Wrong again. Wrong again. So yeah, wrong, and wrong again. So we already got Galatians 1 and 9. We got 3 more scriptures, and then we're going to close out. This is going to be Colossians 2 and 8, and it says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Hamashiach. And holding in your shit, all right, that's a tradition of men. All right, that's ridiculous. That's insane. All right, the Lord's not going to expect that. All right, He has a reasonable expectation of us. All right, He knows we're men at the end of the day. He's not. Well, He's going to put you to death because you had to go to the bathroom. You know how fucking stupid that sounds? That's the dumbest thing ever. All right, that's the dumbest thing ever. And a lot of people think many things in the Bible are dumb, like, oh, well, He's going to kill you over a fish. That's different. That's about disobedience. All right, but it was never disobedience to go to the bathroom and take a poop. All right, we already got that one. To take a poop on Sabbath. All right, that was never it. Or else, if something that big would have been written in the scriptures, and thou shalt not defecate on the Sabbath day, it would have been written in there, but it's not in there. You want to know why? Because it's not fact. It's not literal. So what I wanted to look into is the word philosophy. Okay, philosophy is the ideologies and the thought patterns of man, right? It says philosophy is the systematic, rational study of fundamental questions concerning existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language. And it's, ideologies. Okay, they're ideologies. They're thought patterns of man. All right, things that men think, things that people, men sit around and think, and like, well, maybe this is the reason. Maybe this is the reason. Maybe this is the reason. Maybe we can't poop on Sabbath day. Those are philosophies. All right, and you're supposed to beware and be wary. All right, that's what beware means. Be wary. All right, wary. What does it mean to be wary? Cautious, really. Wary, to be on guard, watchful or cautious about potential danger or problems. And the problem would be false doctrine. All right, again. Okay, Isaiah 8 and 20, 1 John 4 and 1, Galatians 1 and 9, all the ones we got, and there's no light in them. We're going to watch out. There's many false prophets. If anybody, teaches another gospel, all right, you have to be wary. Okay, you have to beware, be wary, okay, lest they spoil you, destroy you, all right, rot you to the core, all right, through philosophy and deceitful things, deceitful teachings, all right, traditions of men. I mean, look at what has happened to the Christians. They say you can't even say the word shit. Why? Because that's a philosophy, vain deceit, and tradition of men, because those things came later in the later medieval Renaissance period, really, where they tried to get rid of what they would call secular language, all right, because they didn't like the way that peasants spoke, all right, but mind you, shit is not a Hebrew word. Fuck is not a Hebrew word. Cunt is not a Hebrew word. Dick, all right, pussy, not Hebrew words. So they would not be in the Hebrew tongue, which means the Lord would not have condemned them because, first of all, they weren't even Hebrew. They weren't even being said. Those things came later, all right? They're just regular words. They're regular words, okay? Now, you shouldn't be being needlessly foul, all right? Oh, yeah, I took my dick and did it, not going to go so crazy because it's a Sabbath still, but you should be doing that, all right? But at the same time, because you said the word fuck, the Lord's going to come and smite you. No, that's a philosophy and tradition of men. The Christian said, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's a sin. Where does it say? And then what they'll do is vain deceit, useless corruption, and misleading people. They'll say, oh, well, it talks about corrupt communication. Well, corrupt communication is talking about the very same thing that you're doing. Corrupt communication, where you're going to corrupt, it means deliberately teaching a lie or teaching something that you ought not to teach. Okay, that's a corrupt communication. So teaching people that they can't poop on Sabbath, that's a corrupt communication. Teaching people that the Lord's going to condemn them because they said the word shit, piss, damn, cunt, fuck, motherfucker, damn, piss, tits, and shit, or titty, or whatever, that's a corrupt communication. Okay, teaching people that Sabbath is Friday, Sunday, and Saturday, sundown perpetually, that's a corrupt communication. Teaching them at Saturday to Sunday, that's corrupt communication. Right? These are all corrupt communications. Those are philosophies. Those are vain deceits. Those are traditions of men, not after Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Okay? Like it says, rudiments of the world. What is a rudiment? Rudiment. A rudiment, a fundamental. Okay? These are the fundamentals of the world, the things that the world says you should and shan't. Shan and shan't do. Shan and shan't. Inside joke. Right? These are things you shan and shan't do. Right? Things you should. Things you shouldn't. And shan is not a word, but, inside joke. But, things you should do and things you shan't not. Okay? So, what else do we got? Here's one. This is great. I love this one. I'm glad I have this one up here. Proverbs 14 and 15. And it says, the simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well into his going. So this shows you a simple man, right? A man that really doesn't have any knowledge. Simple really is an old, it's really an offensive word if you really want to get down to it for someone who's a moron. All right, and the people over there in jolly old England, they're still using that today. All right, I know because I have an English stepmother. All right, my dad ended up marrying this Edomite woman that's English, and before that I had English friends. All right, I had a friend from Birmingham. I had another friend from Essex. And the other guy had a guy friend. Most of them were female friends, because I like the ladies. But I had a male friend. Our friendship didn't last too long. I had boring conversation. We didn't like hate each other or anything. We just stopped, slowly just drifted, not talking anymore online. But he was from, I don't know, somewhere down South England, and I don't remember where exactly. But yeah, man, and they that's he's a bit simple, isn't he? Bit simple, right? Stupid. All right. Another word they use is daft. You'd be a bit daft, really. A little daft in it, right? But that's their slang. They have a lot of good slang over there. But simple. All right. Oh yeah, that boy over there, he's a bit simple. All right, and that means that boy over there, he's a bit stupid. All right, he's a bit he's not all there in the head. All right. So matter of fact, to prove that. That's simple, but it can also mean something else. Simple, all right, innocent, modest, right here. Lacking in intelligence, stupid, or as I like to say, stupid, as the English people say. It's stupid, innit? A bit stupid. All right, they put an H in there. And they're simple. All right, no, I said stupid, but yeah, it's stupid. Simple, all right? A bit simple in it, mate. All right? Doing a little bit simple things in it. Not really right in the head in it, And in it means isn't it? Right, so that's really mean. No, it's a bit stupid, isn't it? Bit not right in the head, isn't it? Or isn't he? But yeah, man. So that's what simple means. The simple believeth every word. Simple, gullible, moronic, dumb. All right. So the simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. So a prudent man, all right, he's going to look into things. All right. For example, what does prudent mean? Acting more than showing care and good judgment to restrain and avoid unnecessary restraint, Slakia, to avoid unnecessary risks. So it's showing restraint and not a risk. But the simple, they believe every word. You say, oh yeah, there was actually a star prison. I believe it. Yeah, and did you know you're not supposed to poop on Sabbath? Yeah, I believe it. All right, yeah. What about how about the original? The demons. Messena or whatever his name was. All right, he actually had to plead to the Lord because they were all demons were going to be gone away with and locked away in prison. But he pleaded to only have 10, and those 10s are the demons that we know now today and they're around. But those 10 and all demons actually stem from the Nephilim, and the Nephilim actually they were actually just a man. They were part man, part angel because the women were getting with these angels that came down, rebelled from God, and what had happened was that they ended up becoming these big crazy demon-like presences that were big, tall, and what they were doing was they was going around and they were actually eating people. They were so big that they started eating everything. They ate all the food on earth, and they started eating people. And then they drowned them, and some the 10% they survived and all that stuff. Then the women, the women became, not everybody died in the flood because there was women and they became sirens, half woman, half mermaid, and they was flapping around. What the fuck are you talking about, Jake? Bugged out, man. Bugged out. Completely crazy. But, you have Jakes out there that believe it, okay? And then finally, Deuteronomy 4 and 2. And we already got one on this, but we're going to close out with this very same type of situation. It says, Deuteronomy 4 and 2, you shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your power, which I command you. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, all right, and the Book of Jubilee, and all these other, and those are the only ones we touched on. There's another ones, the Book of Adam and Eve, all these other crazy fucking ones. They add and they diminish. Okay, they add and they say, oh, well, on this day you should do this and that, and then they diminish and say, oh, well, no, that's not. The Bible says it's the lunar, that's actually wicked. You should actually be worshiping according to the sun. That's fucking bugged out. You're diminishing and you're adding. Okay, and as the scripture we got earlier, you're going to be taking out the book of life. All right, and you're going to be added all the curses within the book. All right, and there's a whole lot of them. All right, so choose your choose what you do wisely. All right, but that's a big whole lesson. I don't know how long we went for. Basically, almost 2 hours on this subject. 2 hours dealing with pseudepigrapha, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees. Probably the only lesson I'm ever make on it, right? Because I don't see any reason to revisit it. If the Lord has the Spirit on me to revisit some point in the future, I might, but this is everything you need to know, Jake. This is almost a 2 hour long compendium. Look up that word, compendium. I'll do it for you. Compendium, all right, a concise yet comprehensive collection of information and analysis on a specific subject. This is a complete compendium, all right, of all the bugged out shit in the Book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Book of Jubilee, right, which are all part of the Dead Sea Scrolls to begin with. So, and other pseudepigraphical books, all right, that we didn't even touch on. Don't get involved in those. Stick with the Bible, all right? You have the Old Testament, the Apocrypha, and the New Testament. That's it, okay? You go off this, well, I'm going to read the Book of Mormon. Crazy. It's not technically pseudepigrapha, but it is pseudepigrapha at the end of the day. It's not classified as such, but it's pseudepigrapha. You want to know why it's pseudepigrapha? Because there's the Book of Mormon, and then there's a bunch of other ones that are the teachings of Joseph Smith, and there are so many weird fucking ones in there, like, oh, you can't consume caffeine, and there's just a lot of weird shit. All right, and a lot of symmetry that was in there. The Mormon story. Here's a little fun story I'll leave you with. The Mormon story for why you cannot use tobacco. All right, is because back in the day, before they were really smoking it, a lot of them were chewing it, and the Joseph Smith and his wives, other quote unquote, as they were calling themselves, prophets' wives, did not like cleaning up the tobacco spit out of the spittoons. All right, they did not like they didn't like cleaning it up because of course you couldn't just, it wasn't just spit, it was also little bits of tobacco in there, and they did not like it. So he inquired to God, and God told them that it was wrong, and they shouldn't do it anymore. All right, so that's that. There's that story. Crazy and simpish. It's not based around women. You're just not supposed to have addictions. All right, because it says the truth shall set you free. You're not very free if you're bound to an addiction, are you? So that's the real reason why you shouldn't be using nicotine and all these addictive substances and whatnot. But yeah, so that's what I'm gonna leave you with. All right, this is a complete compendium of it. There's no reason to go in this. If you got questions, ask them below. I'll try to do my best. If through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemi Shai. If it's a foolish ass question, I'm not gonna answer it. But if the Lord wants a question to be answered, all right, it'll be answered. Because everything's done through the Lord. All right. But that's it, man. That's the lesson. So we're gonna close out there. Lord, what was edifying. Again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Shemi Yahweh Shai, Shemakak Wadash. Shalom again to you brothers and sisters out there. Keep enduring, keep the faith. We're almost out of here. Until next one, Lord willing. Shalom.